Wholeness means to me being in a state of joy.
Wholeness means feeling complete, owning my authentic gifts.
Wholeness is really connected. Everything is connected to everything.
Wholeness is where we have access to all parts of ourselves.
So today we're going to pull out of the Divine Feminine card.
Okay.
And I pulled Mary Magdalene.
Ooh.
Interesting one. The person who made this deck actually wrote that book, a book about Mary Magdalene. Megan Watterson.
Oh, is it Cynthia? Oh, Megan. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a couple different ones, but let me find her and see what it says. So she's number one in this. Okay. Let's see. Oh wait, that's not the right one. I'm the bridge between heaven and earth. I am fully human and fully divine. I love that. And just when your soul selects this card, Mary Magdalene represents the fierce, unwavering love that we all have access to within our own vulnerable hearts. It's a love that renders all things sacred, from the animals to the angels, from the poorest to the most powerful. It's a love that sees the inherent worth of all things, and it's the love that remains, even through the darkest times, even through death. Her love is one that resurrects. Wow.
I love that. I love the fierce and vulnerability. Like, I feel like that's like the key to everything. If we can learn to understand, we can put two opposites together in the same way. Like, that's you know what I mean? That's the goal. It's like it says, she's like this fierce love from a vulnerable heart. Like, you'd think those are opposites, but it's like, once you see how powerful both ends of a spectrum become, you know what I mean? It's like, wow, I loved it. I love that. It's a good one.
She says,
that's a good one.
This one last part, that Mary Magdalene reminds us that we have the power to receive vision from within. We are worthy of such proximity to the divine because it's the other half of what it means to be truly human. She reminds us that there's a bridge between heaven and earth and that we are that bridge. She wants us to remember that the truest church we can ever enter is in the heart. This is where true power rests and where love never ends. A good one. So
yes,
if that resonates with you, that gives you a little bit of encouragement.
Just allow it to. Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Okay, so for the month of July, we're focusing on that mental body, and really we decided to kind of have some fun with the imagination. And if you think about the mental body, you know, we always go to the brain, but it's just that thinking part of ourselves, that creative part, the parts, you know, to me that, you know, the two halves of the brain really do represent these parts of ourselves, you know, creativity. I don't know, we use emotion to create, but it comes from this mental part. And so today we're going to focus on imagination and creativity. And so we're going to imagine I was so glad that Shalene liked this idea that I threw out there, because I'm like, you know, what if I just want to imagine in my own little mind, if I wish to interview some of these big type personalities, you know, people that just have a lot, you know, they're big. And of course, I'm starting with the Miss Oprah Winfrey, right? That's because she is one of the people in my life, at least, that even kind of turned, you know, myself into that spiritual part of who I am. And you know, she was emotional in her show, was emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, right? Like, it hit all four of those things. And so she's always been kind of a mentor to me in my own mind. And I've always appreciated the lessons that she brought to me. So I just want to start out with a little bit about her. So of course, she's most known for the Oprah Winfrey Show that ran for 25 seasons from 1986 to 2011. So it's like my life, I swear, you know, like my life. It helped her. So this was interesting. This helped her become the first Black woman billionaire in 2003, you know, this show. And, you know, that takes a lot of, you know, that's what I love about her, is because she hits these markers, she pushes the limits, but yet she knows how to come back home to that heart, like that card talked about. So her name is Oprah Gail Winfrey, and she was born January 29th, 1954 in the rural town of Mississippi. And I remember her saying that when they named her, they wanted to name her from the Bible figure Orpah. but they in the hospital mixed up the R and the P, and so they invented a new word, Oprah. So it was just kind of a funny little thing. And another thing I think is interesting about her is she had a very troubled adolescence, and she was sexually abused by a number of male relatives and friends. And in her early teens, she moved to Nashville with her father, and he was a barber and a businessman, and her parents were never married. But she has this, highly traumatic story, and it definitely affected her. It definitely affected her, but she used it to her. She worked with it. Because of this wounding, I know, for instance, with sexual abuse, she was one of the first people that started to get, she's credited with getting the word talking about sexual abuse. She also, one of the really, really kind of controversial things, I don't know if controversial is the word, but, for her, she had this aha moment when she recognized that her promiscuity as a teen was directly tied to her sexual abuse. When you turn those mechanisms on in the brain, they're there, right? And she always held such shame for it, but discovered that is a natural reaction to abuse, is you become kind of sexually promiscuous. And so I think that was very helpful for a lot of people, very healing for a lot of people, to kind of understand and put themselves, in a different perspective with sexual abuse and with the troubled teen, right? She was like, that's me. I was that, I was that. Yeah. But she tells a story that when she was in The Color Purple. So now The Color Purple, the original in the 80s, she was only known at the time in Chicago. She wasn't a person known around very much. She was a morning news show host, and she wanted this part. So she said in a Vanity Fair magazine interview, she said, "The Color Purple changed my life forever. From the moment I read the book, that was my story. Celie, I think that's her name, Celie's story was my story. When Celie is writing the letter, 'Dear God, I'm 14 years old. Please explain what's happening to me.' That was my story." Like, oh, that's heartbreaking. She says, "I couldn't believe that Alice Walker had actually penned a story about a girl who was going through the same thing that I was going through in my life. Somebody else knew how I felt. I related so much to Celie's story and found hope." So she had read this book so long ago. When it became a movie, she's like, I have to be in this movie. And she wanted it so badly that she tells the story. I remember her saying that she was waiting for the call. She'd auditioned, she'd forced her way in. Somehow she'd been able to audition, and she wanted it so bad, and knew she wanted it so bad. And she was out like walking on a track, just walking around singing a song, "I Surrender All," just in her mind. It was just this ultimate moment of surrender. Like, I'm not going to ask anymore. I'm just going to let it go. Surrender. I've done all that I can do. And she says that, as she was out there singing it, she got the phone call that she had got the part. And she actually got an Academy Award nomination for that part. And, I think in between all of that, then the Oprah Winfrey Show got made national, and, then people started to know her. But at the time she was in that show, she did not, nobody knew who she was when she was auditioning. So she had to audition for Steven Spielberg, didn't know who she was, the Oprah Winfrey, which is hard to remember or hard to think about now. But
yeah.
So when we get into just spending some time with her, I just thought of, here's some questions I wish I could ask her. So one of the things that I wish I could ask Oprah was, I'd tell her, I'd say, "You have said before that you are happy most of the time." She talks about that. She's like, she said that in interviews. I'm pretty happy a lot. And I would ask her what she attributed this to. I'd love to hear in her words how she can say that, because I think that's what we're looking for. We talk about in the Wholeness library that happy takes practice. People do. You say, "What do you want in the world?" "I just want to be happy." "What do you want for your kids?" "I just want them to be happy." And she's one of the one people that can say, "Yeah, I'm happy a lot of the time." And it's not like, to me, it's not in a pompous way. She's very grounded in that, like, because she, and I want her to hear what does she do that? Or how does she do that?
What does it look like?
What would she attribute that to? Yeah.
How does that feel?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you can't really tell all the time how you feel, but like, yeah, what does that look like? Do you wake up and you're smiling and get laughing all day, or you just feel some peace? Or I want more information.
Yeah. And she's probably said it, but I want to hear it for myself.
Yeah.
So I would ask that question. So, and then in an interview with People, she says she begins, this is what she has said about it. She says she begins each day with thank you, the touchstone of a cherished practice of gratitude she recommends to everyone. She says, if you train yourself to do that, you walk through life feeling the abundance instead of the scarcity. She says, obviously people will say, yeah, well, that's easier for you, Oprah. But she's like, I've been doing it forever. You know, she was doing it much before. And I think that's what that Color Purple story kind of, to me, you know, I keep remembering that because she wasn't always Oprah Winfrey, you know what I mean? But she always was one that was full of gratitude and had trust, right? And allowed trust into her life. So I wanted to ask her in what ways money has made her happy and in what ways not. Because I think that's another thing that she's very vocal about is like, you know, it's almost like a meme, right? It's like, well, if you're Oprah, you know, like she has all the money. She's got a lot of money. But I think she would be very open to the fact of, I mean, of what it does allow you to do and what it cannot do, you know, what it cannot do. And I'd love to learn that from her because I think that's something in our society we kind of think is like the golden ticket of happiness is money, you know, and I don't think it is. And I think she's would eloquently tell us a little bit more about that.
I think as a woman, that's a different spin on it too. I think we talk a lot about billionaires and a lot of them are men. I don't know why, but I would be interested to see from a woman's perspective what she attributes that money feeling.
Right.
You know? How do I say that better?
Right.
I don't know. Just it'd be interesting to hear what a woman has to say about that.
Yeah, especially a woman of color. You know, that's a whole nother layer. You know that she has, you know, trailblazed, right?
Yeah.
Because I know as a woman, I even feel like it'd be like, well, I'd either have to be that very fierce, right? I'd have to be very fierce about it, or like completely vulnerable, like, well, here, let me give you this. And, you know what I mean? Like, it's no big deal, you know, why can't I be vulnerable and fierce at the same time? You know what I mean? I think that's the thing. And I think she, to me, is able to do that. She's able to. Yeah.
You don't hear a lot of, I mean, there's other talk show hosts that you hear, you know, employees complaining about how they were treated. And maybe I was too young to know, but I've never heard of that talked about Oprah that way. Like, I don't think she's a pushover by any means, but
right.
It doesn't seem like she's someone who only cares about herself.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. The other question I'd like just to wonder, you know, just to hear about her is, what do you miss most about being unrecognizable? You know, I mean, I think it would be so strange to have people recognize you all the time. You know what I mean? Like, no matter what country you went in, you're recognized. And I would just love to kind of riff on that kind of concept, like, what do you miss? You know, or maybe what's great about it, but just to hear from her kind of a perspective about fame. You know, I think it's kind of, I've heard her say, you know, fame, it's almost like it's an entity of its own, you know, like the famous Oprah Winfrey is like, you know, an archetype of herself, you know what I mean? Herself. And so you sometimes are playing the archetype yourself, you know, it's not just who you are. The bigger fame person is a whole different entity. And I've heard some people say, I'd like to get her take on that, see what she has to say. I'd love to hear her answer this question. Which would you say is more valuable, money or power? Because she is known as both money and power. And I would love to have a conversation about that, because I think, especially for women, going back to the women, I think, you know, we have a skewed sense of power for women. They're not too often thought of as sensitive and kind. You know what I mean? But I think she's a trailblazer in that I think she is very kind, but yet I think she has boundaries. You know, I think she has boundaries. I think she's probably like the rest of us. We have days where we're great, better, and days that are not so good. Would she give up power to have money? Is money what gives you power? You know, I'd like to just have that conversation with her. She's one that I think could answer some interesting questions. Another question I'd ask her are, you know, back to kind of her happiness. What are your daily musts, right? What are the things you must do every day? Teach us that, you know, let us know about that. What things make up your spiritual practice? Meaning things that you do to feed your soul. And she's kind of open about that. The idea of a gratitude journal, you know, in the 90s, you know, a long time ago, she was the one that kind of talked about being grateful and having a gratitude journal. And it's not something I've done consistently, but I can see the power in it, and been thinking about it lately. Like maybe that is. I feel like I would just be writing the same things over and over again.
Yeah, that's what's happened to me when I've done it. But then you get a little creative and get a little weird, like thankful for your times. But there's some cool parts about that too.
Yeah, exactly. You get to where you're grateful for the dressing on your salad. You know what I mean? Like just change it up. But that's the thing is then you're so grateful for so many things. Again, then your mind registers gratitude, right? That mental body is carrying the idea of gratitude more than destitution. And so therefore you experience more abundance, right?
Yeah.
So
you're probably looking for things through the day, like, oh, I don't want to say the same thing. So what can I find?
Yeah, I think so too. A lot of people talk about gratitude as being a tool, and it's something I'm going to try. I'm going to try it. So, and then my last question, of course, when I picked up this magazine, the 2023 O magazine cover, there was this little corner and it said, "Wholeness is the new wellness." And of course I was like, what? I was like, yeah, and I wanted to, of course, like we always ask, what does that wholeness mean to me? What does the concept of wholeness mean to you, Oprah? What is that like? What did that mean when you said that? Because it was just so, I think it's true, because that wellness seems to be like getting somewhere, and wholeness is about accepting that you're there, and yes, you have growth to go through. Yes, we have places to expand, and we don't know everything yet, but it's about accepting, okay, this wholeness to me is just, it's not out there somewhere, it's here. Where wellness is like, you're kind of reaching toward that goal, and I wonder what she would say about it. What's the difference to her between wellness and wholeness? So those are my little questions I would love to ask Oprah. And if you have a question you would like to ask her, put it in the comments and let's see, right? Let's imagine that she answers.
Yeah, I love it.
Make sure you subscribe, because we're going to have, and see who else we pretend imaginary interview this month in July.
When most people are asked what they want, they will answer, "I want to be happy." But happy takes practice. And that's what the Wholeness Library is all about. So check it out free at thewholenessnetwork.com.